Israel's takeover of Gaza City is growing more brutal and violent by the day. Israeli forces continue to drive out even more families and striking more high-rise buildings, including the building that you're seeing on the screen there. The video shows the bombing of a residential building on Friday that was home to dozens of families, including children, according to building management. They were given just a minute's warning to evacuate after a warning by the Israeli military. Barely enough time to escape with anything. Now, of course, the Israeli military claimed without any evidence that the building was being used for Hamas surveillance. And remember, this is Gaza City, the very same place where a UN-backed group has already declared famine. Many told the AP they are now too weak or injured to move to yet another so-called safe zone that we know are not safe. The day before the international community witnessed that building strike, Senator Chris Van Hollen said, quote, the Netanyahu government is engaged in a campaign of ethnic cleansing in Gaza and slow-motion ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. Speaking of the West Bank, Israeli forces there have increased attacks on villages, while far-right Israeli ministers are pushing even harder to annex the occupied territory. And Trump's response to all of this? Instead of holding Israel accountable, he sanctioned Palestinian human rights groups that called the International Criminal Court to investigate Israeli war crimes. Ken Roth is still with us. He's the former executive director of Human Rights Watch. So how would you describe what is happening across the occupied West Bank and in Gaza? I mean, people are using the term ethnic cleansing. Others are pushing back against that, saying this line that we're hearing that if Israel really wanted to commit genocide, if they really wanted to kill Palestinians, as Benjamin Netanyahu said, they could do it in a single afternoon.
Well, the two situations are very different. Genocide is not just replicating the Holocaust. It's not killing everybody. That's one form of genocide. But if you read the Genocide Convention, it also includes killing part of a group. And I think that's the way to understand Gaza. Israel is killing enough people in Gaza. It is creating conditions of starvation to harm enough people so that they can force 2 million Palestinians into Egypt. And at this stage, I mean, while they don't admit the genocide, Netanyahu and his far-right ministers, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, are very open about seeking to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And so this is genocide as a means to the end of forced deportation. And I think that very accurately describes what's happening in Gaza.
And do you see the appalling killings of journalists in Gaza as part of this assessment?
The killing of journalists is so they're not witnesses. I mean, already Israel doesn't let international journalists in. So all that's left are a group of Palestinian journalists who happen to live there. Many were working very bravely for Al Jazeera. And Israel is gradually finding one pretext after another to kill them, hoping that there will not be witnesses as this mass slaughter, this mass starvation takes place. And so what we're seeing in Gaza City right now, I mean, the destruction of these high-rise apartment buildings. Israel comes and says, oh, Hamas was using it for surveillance, or they were nearby. I mean, they're being very vague. There's nothing proven about this. This is an utterly disproportionate attack because, whatever Hamas was doing, if it was doing anything, does not justify destroying the home of hundreds of people. And again, this is part of trying to render Gaza unlivable. If already 90% of the homes are destroyed, people are starving, and the hope is that it becomes so bad that then, as a humanitarian gesture, they can say, "Oh, we'll feed you in Sinai. We'll feed you someplace else. We'll send you to Libya or South Sudan." And Trump can proceed with his Gaza Riviera plan. So, I mean, we shouldn't be fooled by this. This is an entirely Israeli government-created catastrophe with the aim of ethnic cleansing.
You had an op-ed in The Guardian, and you make the case as to why Trump is uniquely situated to actually help Palestinians. And I love the idea and the premise of it. It is kind of amazing that Trump actually could get his Nobel Peace Prize if he did something to help Palestinians, yet he just doesn't seem to be moving to really use his incredible leverage over Netanyahu to help bring this crisis to an end.
At this point, I think we have to recognize that the Israeli government has lost the rest of the world. Britain, even Germany, has stopped arming them. They're protesting. Most of these governments are now recognizing a Palestinian state. Netanyahu is banking on one man, Donald Trump, who keeps the $3.8 billion in annual military assistance and the endless flow of arms going to, in a sense, fuel the genocide in Gaza. Trump is aiding and abetting a genocide at this stage. But Trump is uniquely situated to end the slaughter, to end the starvation. If he were to say tomorrow, this aid, these arms are conditioned on this ending, it would have to end. Netanyahu would have to listen to him. Now, prior presidents have had a hard time doing this, Biden or Obama, because they were fearful of being attacked by the right. There's nobody to the right of Trump. He owns the Republican Party. He can do what he wants. It's kind of like Nixon in China. So if Trump wants to do this, he can. And I think that, if I were Netanyahu, I would not bank on Trump, because what we know about Trump is he, places the top priority always on himself. And if he decides he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, this traditional, friendship with Israel could be jettisoned, and he could say, look, stop the killing. I want a Palestinian state. This is what I need for my grandeur. And it could happen. So, we've already seen evidence of Trump distancing himself from Netanyahu in Syria, in Yemen with the Houthi, in insisting on temporary ceasefire so far, in disputing Netanyahu's false claim there is no starvation. It would be the next step to say, I've had it with the starvation. I've had it with the bombing of civilians. No more genocide. It's got to stop. Trump could do that. We just have to push him to.
It's pretty disturbing, though, to hear you lay out that the survival of the Palestinian people may depend on Trump deciding that this is the best route for him to get a trophy, I guess he wants to put on the wall. That,
well, fortunately,
disturbs at least me.
Yeah. No, fortunately, this idea of mass expulsion, everybody says no to that. They have to go someplace. Egypt has said no way. They obviously don't want 2 million Palestinians. They don't want Hamas moving into the northern Sinai, where they've traditionally had an insurgency. Jordan doesn't want that from the West Bank, because they actually have a majority Palestinian population as it is. The Bedouin royal family, doesn't want more Palestinians. So the obvious places for Palestinians to go are saying no. They don't want to be party to another Nakba, another catastrophe like 1948. So now Trump is saying, well, maybe South Sudan, maybe Libya, war and torn places. This is ridiculous. So I think this is still a pipe dream. This Gaza Riviera is a guy who's, a real estate guy who thinks that that's the solution to everything. The reality is these are 2 million Palestinians. This is their home. They're not going to go anyplace. And so the only question is, are we going to make life so miserable, continue to starve them, or are we going to put pressure on Netanyahu for this to stop?
You have dedicated your life to international law and human rights, but I'm curious to get your thoughts as to whether or not there is any semblance of international law and human rights left after what Israel has done, because there is no, at least now, sense of accountability for what Israel is doing in Gaza. You talked about the diplomatic relations, that countries are treating Israel as a pariah state. But is there any movement to actually hold someone like Netanyahu accountable? He's coming to the UN. He's going to be speaking at the United Nations as an indicted war criminal for the first time. Omar Bashir in 2013, the former president of Sudan, was an indicted war criminal. He wasn't allowed to speak at the UN. It seems like there's a double standard in international human rights law for Israel compared to other countries.
Well, there is when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, but let's not overstate this. Netanyahu, having been charged basically for the starvation strategy by the International Criminal Court, means that there are 125 governments, 125 member states where Netanyahu cannot travel. Now, there was one exception. Viktor Orban allowed him to go to Hungary, but Viktor Orban is, a confirmed autocrat. The U.S. is not a party to the ICC, so they're not violating any rule by allowing Netanyahu to come here. But, the International Criminal Court has done what it needs to do. Separately, the International Court of Justice is assessing South Africa's genocide case. So these mechanisms are proceeding. We don't say that there is no criminal law just because somebody commits a murder on the street of Manhattan. We say that this is a violation. And so I think the real pressure here is, how do we enforce the arrest warrants that the International Criminal Court has issued? For the time being, Netanyahu's safe. But it's not impossible to imagine, a new government comes in. His hold on power is tenuous as it is. And this new government, wanting to escape Israel's pariah status, says, well, we've got to hand over Netanyahu to The Hague. And we have a precedent for that. That's what happened to Slobodan Milosevic, the former Serbian president, when he lost power and the new government handed him over so they get sanctions lifted. It's not impossible. Am I predicting this is going to happen tomorrow? No, but this is a feasible option.